how close are you or someone you know to insolvency? We've got some very interesting new data, and we're going to discuss it starting right now.
This is Debt Free in 30. Here's your host, Doug Hoyes.
Here's some advice. Don't judge a person until you've walked a mile in their shoes. Or if you're a Canadian, don't judge a person until you've walked a kilometer in their boots, I guess. I'm on Twitter sporadically, and it's amazing how many ignorant comments I read whenever I post something about debt. You borrowed it, pay it back. As if that was the only reason they weren't paying it back. Unemployment is low, get a job. It's easy to judge someone else when everything is going great for you, but have you ever had an accident or gotten sick or gotten laid off without warning? Then what? What happens when the cost of groceries goes up faster than your paycheck? What do you do then? What's the magic solution to higher food costs? My point is that life isn't easy, and before you start criticizing someone else for their issues, it's a good idea to take a step back and understand the pressures that other people are facing. And today, that's what we're going to do. This week, we released our Hoyes and Michalos Joe Debtor Bankruptcy Study. We've been doing this study since 2011, so this is the 12th year we've done this study. It's the only one of its kind in Canada. And as Ted will know, it's a study, not a survey.
That's right. That's important.
Well, a survey is where you ask a bunch of people, so how do you feel about this? And you get people's impressions.
How do you feel about kittens?
I love kittens. And that's perfectly valid, but we're not asking people what they think. We are actually crunching the numbers.
Right.
So what we do is we take all of the data from everybody who has filed a bankruptcy or a consumer proposal with Hoyes and Michalos. We crunch the numbers and see what it says. We do this, obviously, because we want to understand what's going on.
Right.
Why does consumer insolvency happen? So that we can better help everyone who contact us. But we also publish this study so that you, the listener and the viewer, and perhaps the policymakers in government,
right,
because I know they're all watching this too, can understand the pressures faced by real people. The entire study is available at joedebtor.ca. I'll put a link in the show notes on YouTube. But first, I'm Doug Hoyes, and here to discuss this is the co-founder of Hoyes and Michalos, along with me, Ted Michalos. Ted, welcome back.
How's it going?
Fantastic.
Well,
it's been a fun day so far, hasn't it?
Joe Debtor doesn't agree with you.
No, and we're going to talk about that. So this Debt Free in 30's half-hour podcast, that's why it's called Debt Free in 30. You see, that's where we came up with the name. So we don't have time to go through everything in the study, but I want to focus in on 2 points. And the first point is millennials.
Right.
So tell me what the Joe Debtor Hoyes and Michalos bankruptcy study tells us about millennials.
So for the first time, millennials make up over 50% of the people that were filing last year. They only represent a quarter of the population. So that's pretty disturbing.
Well, and disproportionate. So I'll put this graphic up on the screen for those who are watching on YouTube, and this would be perhaps one you might want to watch on YouTube so you can follow along. And there you go. You see the chart. Millennials are over 49% of the people who filed an insolvency with us, but they are less than 27% of the general population.
Well, and so let's remind people too. So who are the millennials, right? They're the people that were born, what is it, 80 to 2000?
Yeah, so 1981 to 1996 is the numbers we're using. So that would be someone who is 26 to 41 years old.
Right. And you and I are boomers, so because we were born in that.
Wow, that's an interesting question, because according to the computer, boomers are born from 1946 to 1964. I was born in 1964.
I was born in 61.
So you're much older than I am.
So I'm a boomer.
So I don't consider myself a boomer, but I guess based on the math, I am. To me, a boomer is someone who was born after the war. Okay, I was born after the war, but so was every war? Yeah, exactly. So talking about boomers, they are 30% of the population now, and that graph we just put up on the screen, they are less than 14% of insolvency.
So that's the exact opposite, right? So the millennials are 20% of a quarter of the population, half the debt. The boomers are a third of the population, but only 15% of the debt.
And that kind of makes sense because boomers are kind of aging out of the insolvency process.
Well, and that's right. I mean, a boomer now should be in their prime earning years and they should be thinking about their retirement, although we know that they're all getting squeezed by looking after parents and kids and that sort of stuff. But that's not what Joe Debtor.
The oldest boomers are 76 years old.
Right.
So,
Martin, speak up.
What? You can turn the volume up. Yep. So they are past, a number of them are past their working lives.
Yep.
I didn't say useful lives. I said past their working lives.
I guess we gotta squeeze the Generation X people in there. Between the boomers and the millennials, there's Generation X.
Exactly. And they are 24% of the population, about 31% of insolvencies. Okay, well, that means they are moving into the prime insolvency years, I guess.
Well, not according to Joe Debtor. It'd be the opposite, right?
They're moving out of.
That's right.
Out of those.
They're transitioning from the establishing themselves, dealing with all the stuff to get their life going. Now they're in the higher income earning, and they've dealt with those situations.
Well, and what makes the Gen Xers so interesting, and again, I'll throw another chart up on the screen here. This is the average age of our clients. So when they file insolvency. So what this chart tells me is that in 2013, the average age of our clients was around 44, whereas today in 2022, when we are crunching these numbers, it's 42.1.
Right. And I can assure you, folks, that the average age of a Canadian didn't drop by 2 years in that same period of time.
I suspect not.
In fact, it probably went the other way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And again, the Gen Xers, I guess, are the 42-year-olds, roughly.
Yep.
I guess the oldest millennial maybe is kind of straddling that. But that's where the age is coming down. So I want to talk about why that is. But let me throw one more data point at you here. Back in... Well, millennials are the only age group to experience an increase in unsecured debt.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about that.
Yep.
It was up, their debt was up 9.1% in 2022. Back in 2012, our average client carried over $60,000 in unsecured debt.
Right.
Okay. And just remind everyone what unsecured debt means.
So it means that there's nothing pledged as security against the loan. So for example, folks, a mortgage, if you don't make your payments, they take your house. Your car, if a lease or a loan, if you don't make your payments, they take your car. Credit card, you don't make your payments, their only recourse is to sue you.
So that a credit card is an unsecured debt.
Correct.
Today, average unsecured debt is just over $49,000. So that's a big drop across the board. And yet for millennials, unsecured debt is going up. So what's going on here? So you meet with people every day.
Right.
You've already met with a couple of people before we even started this call, this podcast. Why is it that our clients are getting younger and we're seeing more millennials? What's going on here?
Okay. Well, so let's look at the reasons why millennials become insolvent. Well, let's start with student loans because, the older cohort, the majority of them don't have student loans to the same extent. I mean, the average millennial has got what? It's a significant number.
Yeah. So again, we're talking about people born between 81 and 96. Right. So they're 26 to 41 years old. Well, if you're in school till the age of 22, it's not surprising that by the age of 26 or the age of 30, you still have a student loan. Right. They're most likely to be recent graduates. More than a third of millennials who file an insolvency with us carry a student loan, and when they do, they owe on average just under $17,000.
So let's think about this for a second. You've gone out of high school, you've gone on now to university, college, a trade school, whatever it is to get ahead with your life, and the first thing that happens when you graduate isn't that you get a job, it's that you start already in the hole $17,000. You're already underwater.
And there's your problem right there.
Right.
So why are millennials having problems? Well, they're starting out in debt. And okay, you've already admitted that you're old.
Hey, pardon.
So when you went to university, which was right around Great Depression, how long was that?
Well, we used abacuses and stone tablets with chisels.
Well, and I went to university in the 1980s.
Right.
And which I guess you did too. And at that time, tuition was $1,000 a year.
That's right.
So I could get a minimum wage job and earn enough to pay for my tuition.
Right.
And I had a part-time job while I was in university. I could pay for, books and stuff like that. My parents helped me out with living expenses, all good. So very few of my peers had to resort to significant student loans because it was $1,000 a year.
Right.
Whereas today, of course, that basic...
It's $4,000 a semester at least.
Yeah, you're looking at like $8,000 a year, and that's unless you're taking a good course like engineering or medical or nursing or something like that, and then it can easily be double that.
Well, and you can't make enough in a part-time job in the summer.
It's impossible. Yeah, unless you're making $100 an hour, which why are you going to school if you can earn that kind of money? So okay, student loans are putting millennials behind right at the word go. Okay. So second thing on my list here. Credit cards. Tell me about credit cards.
Well, so 87% of the millennials that we saw last year had credit card debt. And that's up from 84 the year before. But most importantly, it's $14,000, well, $13,948.
Yeah, and that's a higher number than the year before. Now, okay, we've been talking about boomers. Boomers, 88% of boomers have credit card debts. Okay, right. Millennials, boomers, they both have about the same percentage of them have credit card debt.
Right.
And the boomers actually have more credit card debt. They're around 21,500. You said millennials are around 14,000. But the point is boomers have always had a high credit card percentage. Millennials are now catching up. So that's credit cards. Okay, give me the third reason that millennials are becoming clients more often.
Taxes. And so this is a recent problem simply because of the way the government dealt with COVID. I mean, millennials have always been a portion of them that owe taxes, but now almost half of them have tax debt. And it's because they received those CERB benefits for 2020, 2021, even maybe into 22 that weren't taxed adequately at the time. And so now they're filing their taxes, and lo and behold, their money's that they owe.
Yeah, if you were a 70-year-old baby boomer when COVID started, you probably weren't collecting CERB.
Probably not.
But if you were a millennial or anybody who was working and you tended to be in a job where you weren't able to work, boom, 2020, you get CERB, no taxes taken off. 2021, CRB, only 10% taxes taken off. You filed taxes, guess what? You owe a bunch of money.
Well, and so anybody, while we've been going through this, in the back of my head, I went, okay, so the millennials have $17,000 in student loans. They got $14,000 in credit cards, and now we're telling you folks they've also got $12,000 worth of taxes. Right? We're not done yet, but those numbers alone, just based on this is some kid just got out of school that's just in their first job. They're just trying to set themselves up. They're already that far behind.
Of course, to us, anybody who's 30 years old is a kid.
Well, anybody who's 50 years old.
That's right. But yes, you're exactly right. Okay, so let's do the fourth reason, and this is, of course, your favorite.
We knew this was coming.
Payday loans, baby. Tell us about payday loans.
All right. Well, so first off, we're not going to call them payday loans anymore. For the purposes of our study, we're calling them rapid loans because they're going to encompass so much more than just these 2-week payday, pay 360% interest loans.
And you're right. We have changed the wording. We are, of course, the industry leaders. We are the ones who set the tone for everybody. And so in the past, we called them payday loans because that's what they were. You borrowed $1,000 and you had to pay it back next payday. But when you look at the companies that offer loans, and I'm not going to list them because they're not sponsors of the podcast unless they want to contact us. Right. They are now offering what we are calling rapid loans because that's the term we came up with, and maybe we'll come up with a different term as time goes on. So walk us through, and I'll throw a graphic up on the screen here as well. What is it that we define as a rapid loan? So
first and foremost, they're fast funds. They're easy to get. Almost all the stuff is online now, so you can do it in your pajamas in the middle of the night. There's no kind of security or collateral. So they're not telling you that, you got to pledge your car. If you don't pay us, we're going to come take that. You don't have to prove to them that you've got money in the bank for them to lend you money now. You're probably going to get approved no matter what your credit score looks like. As long as you've got a regular source of income coming in, whether it's a paycheck or a disability or a government pension, they know when your next paycheck's going to come, when your next source of income's coming in, so they know when they can take their money back. And remember, folks, whenever you take one of these short-term loans, they're always taking back more than they gave you. That's the way they make their money. The interest rates on these things are just insane. And so payday loans are ridiculous, but we're now lumping anything with an interest rate of over 29% as well, because most of these installment loans are telling you that, 29, 49, 59 is the limit, because at 60, it's criminal.
Criminal code kicks in, right?
Most of these loans are short-term, even by a bank's definition. So a payday loan obviously is 2 weeks, but even the installment loans, they try to set you up on 3, 4, 5, 6 months. You get into the longer periods of time, and the interest rates are usually lower. They're still ridiculous, but they're trying to make a quick buck here. That's the whole goal.
And so let's talk about this making a quick buck. So we all know that in Ontario, a payday lender can charge $15 on every 100 borrowed.
Every 2 weeks.
Well, however long the loan is. If it's a 1 week loan, they're still charging $15 on 100. But yes, if I get a loan for 2 weeks, because that's when my next payday is, over the course of a year, I could be getting a loan, paying it back 26 times 15, 390.
Right.
So in my head, that's 390%. Now these rapid loans can only charge a maximum of 60% because they're federally under the federal criminal code rules, not under the provincial payday loan rules. So why would I, as a lender, want to lend somebody at 45% interest when I can lend to them at 390% interest?
Well, so first, they hook you with the little loans. Most of the people that we see, they end up, for whatever reason, they get a payday loan and then maybe a second loan and maybe a third payday loan. And so they're making these ridiculous payments. If the choice is, are they going to default on these payments or we're going to find a better way for them to deal with it? Let's get them into a longer-term loan at a lower interest rate. They can still make the payments to us over time.
So they're making money.
They're always making money. I mean, think about it. Up until very recently, the interest rates were very, very low. Now, interest rates, that's another program. In fact, didn't we have that program recently?
We have talked about interest rates. Yes. I mean, and you and I were both offended by the fact that a year or two ago when interest rates were close to zero, credit card rates were still 20%.
Right.
They never came down, but certainly payday loan rates and rapid loan rates never came down either. So I'm going to throw this graphic up on the screen. For the first time ever, more than half of our clients, I'm not just talking about millennials, I'm talking about everybody has a rapid loan. 53% of our clients. You go back to 2011, it was 22%.
Well, and do you remember when we back 2011, one, maybe two payday loans. So they owed maybe $800,000 in total. That's not the number anymore.
No. More than half carry at least one extremely high-cost loan with average balances totaling almost $12,000. That's up 17% from 2021. So, good Lord. But let's finish up on millennials then.
Right.
So, you've given 4 reasons why millennials are filing bankruptcy and consumer proposals at an increasing rate. Student loans, credit cards, taxes, and rapid loans. However, I am of the view that those aren't the problem. Those are the symptoms of the problems.
Yep.
So, like, what's the real problem here? Is it, oh, well, millennials don't have jobs, they're not working, that's why they're in these problems?
No. So 85% of all the millennials that come deal with us are employed. 85%, folks. That's a pretty high
That's pretty
number.
much everybody, yeah.
8% are unemployed. Okay, that's about what it is in the normal workforce, a little bit higher. And the rest are either self-employed or on some sort of disability or pension of some type. The average income for millennial, $2,859 a month. So that's not a bad number for a single person if they were a single person, right? But, well, describe the perfect storm.
Well, so, and just for basis of comparison, the average income of all our clients is roughly the same, $2,842, so slightly lower.
Which makes sense since they're half our clients.
Right, there you go. So the problem is not that they don't have a job and that they don't have income. But yeah, the perfect storm is, you already mentioned it. I start off my life, my working life, in debt.
I'm already in the hole.
Already in the hole. And boomers, or people who don't like to call themselves boomers, we started off life with no debt. Right. Because it didn't cost anything to go to college or university 30 years ago. Yep. We didn't need to start off a debt. And so if you start off with a great job, okay, I guess all is good. You can make all your payments. But if there are any kind of hiccups at all,
right,
boom, now I can't pay my student debt. And let's talk about hiccups. 40% of millennials have a dependent.
I don't know if you should call a dependent a hiccup, but let's just, there's more than one person living on that $2,800.
And 22% are lone parents.
Yeah, and that's a real challenge.
That's a challenge. 4.3% of boomers are lone parents.
Right.
So obviously because they're much older.
Yep.
So you have a dependent, you're a lone parent, and then, oh yeah, guess what? Real estate.
Yep.
So how old were you when you bought your first piece of real estate?
I bought my first recent, I think it was in the 80s. But this was strange, this is history. I lived in the city of Guelph at the time, and they did a lottery for first-time home buyers. So they put up a new development, and 25% of the lots had to be sold at cost. That was the affordable housing solution at the time, and I won that lottery. Wow. I got to buy one of those houses.
There you go. And so you were able to get into the real estate market when you were in your 20s or 30s.
Because I got lucky.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But even if you hadn't, okay, right. So at cost, that maybe saved you, I don't know, $10,000, $20,000.
Those days, it's hard to tell.
Yeah, because back then it wasn't a big deal. I mean, the first property I ever bought was $205,000. Was
it a chimney?
It was a chimney.
Yep.
It was a little chimney I had. So now, of course, again, that was back in I think that was 1989. Mm-hmm. And, not that big a deal to do that. Well, right. Today, if whether you're a millennial or not, you got to pay $1 million to buy something.
Right.
And if I'm struggling with student loan debt, and I'm not yet the president of the company, kind of hard to do.
Qualify. That's right.
It just doesn't happen. So because you're priced out of the real estate market, unlike the boomers who bought their house 30 years ago.
Right, and just refinanced to try and deal with the debts as they increased.
Yeah, or I'll sell my house and I can put $300,000 in the bank.
Right.
Whereas if you don't have that starting point,
Millennial can't do that.
So you got student loan debt you're trying to service. You become a lone parent. Now you got childcare costs, other kid expenses. You can't work mega overtime due to all your childcare responsibilities. So what do? Well, you turn to credit cards to make ends meet.
Right.
And then you're into this vicious cycle, which is, of course, why we do this study every year. So you spend years trying to catch up. You delay getting married, buying a home, having kids. So the debt is really like handcuffs, right?
Right.
Like I can't
when you're training for something that you put on those weighted socks and they're deliberately holding you back and holding you down.
I think it's a weighted vest.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's a weighted vest. But yes, I totally get it. I mean, if I've got this weight on me, these handcuffs on me, I can't just, pick up and move to another city or province, get a better job because I can't afford the moving expenses. Right. I can't afford first and last month's rent. I'm kind of stuck.
And it takes twice as much effort to do half as much work.
You're stuck. So, okay, tell us more about being stuck then. Throw some more facts at us from the survey.
Well, so some interesting stuff. Now we're talking about the average person that came to see us. We're not just focusing on the millennials, but their income increased by almost 10% last year. That doesn't mean they got a 10% raise. It just means that probably overall the people that were filing, their incomes were higher than in previous years. So there might have been some kind of salary increase, but for the most part, it's people earning more money have found themselves in trouble and having to come to use our services.
And that's an amazing point.
Right.
So it's not that Joe Debtor's income went up 10%. It's that this guy who was filing insolvency last year, it's a different guy this year who's actually got higher income. But even with that higher income,
Still can't do it. Well, and on top of that, the average total unsecured debt load actually dropped. It was $49,316 last year. So that's down 2% from the year before. So the higher income, lower debt.
Okay, so what is going on here then? Because if you would think if our average client debt is higher and their debt is lower, that seems like good news to me. Right. Why is it these people are having such significant problems?
So none of this addresses the fact that it costs you more to live. So everyone's expenses have gone up. And if you just want to use a rough estimate, everything across the board went up about 30%. I mean, we can look at this individually. Housing costs, which are roughly 40% of everyone's budget?
Well, yeah. And the experts would say, well, you want to keep it to around 35%.
Right. So that's a problem already. You're spending more on where you're going to live.
Yeah. For our clients, it's 43% of their budget. So they're already spending more on housing than is recommended.
Yep. And what about
the reason for that is rent went up.
Yeah.
So we know that last year average rent or mortgage payments, again, these are for our clients, were up about 5.5%. So, and okay, I can understand how mortgage payments are going up. We don't have very many clients who own a house, but certainly rents were up. And so more of your budget is going to living.
Yep. So we've got that you are making more, lower debts, but it costs you more to pay your rent. It also costs you more to drive, to get around. Transportation costs are about 20% of what people spend in their monthly income.
And in 2022, more people had to go back into the office or work.
Right. So they got used to not paying this money for 2 years, and now suddenly its expense is back in your budget.
Yep, that's a problem. And then, well, like you said, just about everything else, it's just under a third of our income, and everything was up.
So when we did the math, after you're paying all your living expenses, maybe you're making more money, but you're left with $250 to make your minimum payments on $50,000 worth of debt.
And how much would the minimum payments on $50,000 worth of debt be if it's like you said, you got credit cards, you got taxes, you got this, you got that?
$2,000, roughly $1,900, somewhere in that neighborhood.
So you're toast.
Yeah, you got to pay $250 when you're expected to pay $19. So you're either going to start paying and taking it back and paying and taking it back, or you're going to borrow from somebody else to make the payments.
Like a rapid loan.
There you go.
And so when we look at the numbers, our clients don't have one rapid loan.
No, the average client has 4.
So that's of the clients who have rapid loans, which is more than half of our
53%.
They don't have one. They have on average 4. And
and 3/4 of our clients have 2 or more, right?
Yeah. So, and I'll put the chart up on the screen.
Yep.
Take a look at the long tail on this distribution here. 7% of our clients have at least 10 different rapid loans.
Yeah.
I mean, that blows me away. I mean, I see it every day, so it doesn't. But how is it possible that you can have 10 of these?
Well, and if everyone was following the rules properly, you probably can't. But they're so profitable for these companies that you get the loan from company A, I can't pay it, so I go to company B, I get enough money to pay off A, then I go to company C, then to D, now I'm back to A. It's just a treadmill.
And you said already they're online.
Right.
So it's easy to do. And we know that the payday loan component of this, generally speaking, doesn't report to the credit bureaus.
Correct. And they don't check your credit bureau.
And they don't care anyways.
They just want to know that you got a regular source of income coming in.
Yeah. So if you're borrowing $10,000 from an installment loan company, okay, fine. They probably will run a credit check on you. But if you're getting a payday loan that you're going to pay off in 2 weeks, they don't bother doing a credit check in a lot of cases, and they're not reporting to the credit bureau either, so they would have no way of knowing that you've got 8 of these other loans out there.
Well, and so our average rapid loan size for last year was $3,000, which is 6% higher than the year before, but a stunning 50% higher than in 2017.
And again, I'll throw the graphic up on the screen. I mean, it is kind of amazing. That you're right. 2017, it was around $2,000. Now it's over $3,000. And if we went back to like 2014, it was well under $2,000. So more than a third of all individual rapid loans were over $2,500, which is obviously a trend that's been going up since 2016. And that's why we're calling them rapid loans, not payday loans.
Right.
There's no way you're paying back $2,500 next payday.
That's right.
On a $2,000 paycheck. And so that easy access to these higher dollar installment loans is obviously driving the average loan size up. Males and females, and again, I can throw the chart up, 37% of rapid loans now are over $2,500, which is, double what it was a few years ago. Males and females have about the same usage of rapid loans. They're more prevalent amongst younger borrowers. We already talked about millennials.
Yep.
Maybe we'll end up doing a full podcast on that. So we have painted a somewhat bleak picture here. More student loan debt, even though incomes are up and debt is down, expenses are up. I'm of the view that the recession started last year. Nobody else agrees with me, but whatever. I think it'll be officially declared this year. Interest rates are still high.
Yep.
Obviously, I predicted they're coming down. We'll see if I'm right on that one. Is there any good news here? Anything at all that we can say about any of this?
Well, we've been through it all before, and we'll go through it again. I mean, if you're dealing with this kind of situation, folks, the thing to keep in mind is that you got options. You're not. It's an individual experience, but you don't have to deal with it by yourself. I mean, this is going to sound like a commercial. I guess it is, but
it is a commercial.
If you've got more debt than you can handle, you should talk to a professional. Look at doing a consumer proposal. If a consumer proposal won't work for you, maybe you need to look at bankruptcy, but there are options to relieve you from the stress and the pressure that you're experiencing. I
had a phone call last week from a person who is a millennial, is a lone parent, has one child, and this person, and I'm not going to give any details on this, I'm going to make this very generic, but this person has a conventional job, working at an office, decent paycheck from 9 to 5, but then from 6 till 10 every night, they go to their second job.
Right.
They got 2 jobs. And I talked to this person. I said, okay, how are you making you can't even sleep.
Right.
And they said, well, no, I can't, but I need enough money to pay the rent. And they got all these debts that I have to support because I got a student loan, blah, 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 exactly what we described.
Right.
And so I said, well, I think the answer in your case is we do a consumer proposal, get rid of the debt, and then maybe that second job, instead of doing it 5 days a week, maybe only do it a couple of days a week. Maybe you don't even have to do it at all. Maybe you can spend some time with your kid. And it was, that person was very relieved to hear, hey, you know what? There is a potential option here.
Right.
And yeah, you're not alone. That's why we're going through all this. So there you go.
Makes sense.
So if you've got these issues, reach out, I think is what you're saying. So my final comment on this is that our Hoyes Michalos Joe Debtor Bankruptcy Study shows that times are tough. Like that's where we're at, right?
Yep.
Times are tough. And we did say it on our New Year's predictions show. We think things will change, but as of right now, this is where we're at. So if you've got debt, and in particular tax debt and student loan debt, it's not going to get better on its own. Tax debt doesn't go away. We've done shows about the limitations period. And, if the debt's from 3 years ago, the credit card company can't sue you. Taxes aren't like that.
And student loans aren't like that either.
Because they're both government. So you got to reach out for help. And, of course, our team's available, Hoyes.com. That's what we're here for. And again, the reason, and I want to emphasize this again, the reason we do this study and this podcast is to show you you're not alone. Excessive debt is a very serious problem.
And it's a very common problem. And that's why we do this podcast, to show what the problem is, but also to provide as many practical solutions as possible. So if you've watched this long, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Let's juice the algorithm so that we can get the word out to other people who need to hear this. Ted, thanks for being here. That is our show for today. Everything we've talked about, including a link to our Joe Debtor Study, joedebtor.ca. You can find it. There is a link in the show notes before. We also did a fantastic documentary a couple of years ago on Millennials. That's right.
And these are the same topics, again, that we are seeing, only more so. So I'll put a link to that as well. It's very interesting. There's already been like almost 500,000 people have watched it, but I'll put a link to that as well. So that is our show for today. Until next week, thanks for listening. I'm Doug Hoyes. That was Debt Free in 30.